everyone. Am I audible at the back? Yeah? Okay, awesome. So hi, everybody. I'm Akshit. I lead the engineering team at Huddle 01. And we are a DePIN dedicated to making real-time communication affordable, cheaper, and performant. So we are a DePIN project. So if you're familiar with DePIN, DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure. And we saw a gap in the market that real-time communication is very hard and it's very pricey as well. So people like Zoom, like companies like Zoom, Google Meet, all these rely on heavy infrastructure and have to host it on cloud providers like AWS. So this is what my talk is about, how DePIN can make it cheaper. So as I said, DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure. And in blockchain, we've seen a couple of trends from the start. Things like NFTs have reshaped ownership, digital ownership. In games, you have these skins and everything, and these can be solved via NFTs to make sure that only one person owns it and stuff. And smart contracts have automated money transfer as well. So you can program how smart contracts transfer money based on a particular condition. So, but we're still deploying these things on centralized infrastructure like AWS. So if you were to build a complex app which requires heavy infra, you still host it on AWS. Things like storage and bandwidth still require centralized infrastructure. So that's where DePIN comes in. We saw this with Filecoin. So Filecoin is a really good example of a DePIN project, which is decentralizing storage. So similar to Filecoin, we have it for real-time communication. So charging for stocks and paying for flows. So this is a very interesting trend we saw, and AWS was charging crazy amounts of money for egress costs. So as you can see in the slides, AWS charges like 700x amount of pricing for egress costs. So say like you fill a bucket full of water, water being the amount of storage, then the amount of water that's being transferred out of AWS, which is data being transferred out, they charge like really costly amounts for that and not for the stocks that they save. So that's how AWS is charging, and it's like 700 markup. So why I'm bullish on bandwidth projects like DePIN. So internally at Huddle 01, we did an interesting study where we calculated the bandwidth costs for hosting on AWS, like hosting a real-time communication app on AWS. And as you can see, for a single participant, the bitrate consumption was around 700 kbps. And for 8 speakers in a room and 20 listeners, the data consumed was around 112 Mbps. And if we were to take like 100 such rooms hosted on a particular app, you'll see that it comes around 11,200 Mbps. So data consumed in an hour would be around 40,000 gigabits, okay? So that's a huge amount. And if we were to calculate the data transfer cost on AWS, that comes around to $400, okay? So if we were to use a DePIN project and these services were hosted on a physical infra where people are incentivized to run these nodes, then the price goes much lower, okay? So these are some popular DePIN projects. You can see Huddle 01, which is the project we are working on. And some popular projects like Grass are also working in this bandwidth department where they're saving cost. All you need to do is just install an extension and you'll be good to go. So if you are looking to build a DePIN, the best way would be to look for a market which is super overpriced, and you can easily save costs by allocating that job to a particular person who can run it on their own machines or host it somewhere, maybe with less P. So as you can see, the less P, the better. This is one thing to follow if you are looking to launch a DePIN project very easily. And it's very easy to deploy a project with less P as there's no physical part involved. There are really good projects with more P as well, as you can see on the left. But with less P, you'll be able to run it and make it work. So thank you. That was a small lightning talk by me. And I am happy to entertain some questions.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Anyone? Let's wait for another 5 seconds. Okay. Oh, do you want to throw it? Yes, perfect.
So you talked about essentially that the less the P, the
Oh,
better.
you'll need to put it, it's a mic.
Hello.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
So you talked about a point where essentially the less P, the better. I just wanted to understand if you have less P, there's also a chance of having more chance of gaming the system. That means verification can become tricky. If your system is more digital rather than having a physical network, for example, Helium, it's very difficult to game a Helium system because you have a Bobcat miner. But in case of something like Hurdle, it's more of a digital network. That means you require verification systems, more like QoS systems. So have you thought about that at Hurdle 01, where you can have a QoS system implemented, which can act as a similar to a physical infrastructure network as well, so that nobody games it?
Yes. So the best way to go about is to first solve distribution as we did, because the main concern is to save costs, because people will only come if you save costs. But if you are to move ahead and look at it in the long term, then you'll have to come up with a ZK system which is provable in nature. So we have to look for a way to make the compute verifiable, provable, using things like ZK as they've come. And right now, the way to prove, like make it provable is very difficult, as things like CIRCOM have their limitations as well. But the last step would be to make it provable in some sense.
Yeah, awesome. I think if you're able to do that, then communication becoming provable in a digital environment will make it a highly scalable environment and make communication much more performant and scalable. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, one over here. Sorry, we have only time for one more.
Yeah. Hello, Akshit. Amazing talk, by the way. So I got curious to know, let's suppose if a company like Google or Microsoft want to adopt a DePIN, do you think it's that scalable right now or maybe in future?
So if Google were to do it, then first of all, they are in direct competition with the DePIN project, as they have GCP and they're charging like egregious costs for those. And so it would be difficult for them to adopt. But eventually, once like the DePIN project scales and people start adopting it, then they'll have no choice to move on to these cheaper options, because it will be much cheaper for them as well.
Okay, thank you.